Late autumn night in 1998, Silverbrook City was so quiet that the sound of fallen leaves seemed to echo through the air. Rowan Vale and Sienna Vale were driving their light blue Honda Civic, winding gently along the empty highway toward the suburbs, where their small home awaited them. They had just finished celebrating their third wedding anniversary, and the happiness still lingered in their smiles and the sparkle in their eyes. Rowan drove slowly, occasionally reaching out to clasp his wife's hand, while Sienna, beaming, talked excitedly about their plans to open a sidewalk cafe downtown. No one could have guessed that their joy would soon be shattered. The sudden impact came far too quickly. A silver sedan roared up from behind, swerved sharply, and slammed into the side of the Honda, dragging it across the guardrail. The car skidded a long distance before plunging into the deadly ravine beside the road. Heat billowed from the crumpled engine, and oil stained the pavement a dark crimson. The last yellow street lamps cast a faint glow on shattered glass and twisted metal fragments flying in every direction. In that moment, the only thing that existed was the harsh clash of metal. A neighbor on the highway rushed over to help, but when they leaned in to look, they found only the chaotic wreckage and the motionless figures of Rowan and Sienna. Both were rushed to Silverbrook General Hospital in critical condition. The piercing sirens cut through the night like a helpless scream. Yet just as they were about to enter the operating room, the on-call doctor announced that neither would ever regain consciousness. Local police recorded the incident in a few brief lines: 2 victims killed in a traffic collision. Suspect driving a silver sedan fled the scene. Case closed. No identifying information about the driver, no clear license plate number. The dent on the Honda's door, the fresh scratch on the windshield pillar, everything was noted down then shelved in a dusty corner of the archives. The investigation ended abruptly, as though the memory of those 2 young lives had never existed. In a house more than 10 miles away from the hospital, Mrs. Marielle Vale sat knitting a wool scarf by the window overlooking the lavender garden. A knock at the door shattered the silent calm. She assumed it was her neighbor coming for a routine visit, but her hand trembled when she saw 2 police officers ushering in a young woman, small-framed, her eyes brimming with tears. Marielle recognized her at once. It was Sienna, her daughter-in-law. The world blurred before her eyes, and she collapsed into the armchair upon hearing the dreadful news her eldest child had received. A tear traced down her wrinkled cheek as her breathing turned ragged and broken. At that moment, 6-year-old Arden Vale was sitting on the floor, coloring in a sketchbook. He jolted when he saw his grandmother fall and, not understanding what was happening, scrambled to her side. "Grandma, are you okay? Where are my parents?" Marielle struggled to sit upright, forced a faint smile, then gently held Arden's small arm. "Your parents. They won't be coming home." Her voice shook with each word, piercing Arden's heart. Young and innocent, his eyes shone with tears, disbelief etched on his face. Meanwhile, a neighbor hurriedly placed 4-year-old Elian, Arden's little brother, in Marielle's arms. Elian, gentle-faced but puzzled, asked, "Grandma, where did Mom and Dad go?" Marielle clutched her youngest grandson to her chest, tears spilling over. She stroked her grandson's hair. "Grandma and Grandpa will take care of you both. Your parents have gone far away." Arden reached out and touched his brother's shoulder. "Don't cry, Em. I'll take care of Grandma and you." Rowan and Sienna's funeral was held that same weekend. The church overflowed with friends, colleagues, and neighbors. Under the warm yellow lights, wreaths of white flowers were arranged solemnly around the casket. Marielle, dressed in charcoal black, eyes reddened, could not stop gazing at the portrait of the young couple. Arden squeezed Elian's hand tightly, striving to remain composed, though grief welled up in his own eyes like a heavy blow to his heart. The medical examiner reported that Sienna had suffered severe chest trauma and Rowan had a fatal brain injury. Neither could be saved. No one could fathom that behind the misty veil of that night, A powerful culprit had sowed devastation upon this small family and fled without mercy. After the funeral, Marielle brought her 2 grandsons back to their small house amid the lavender fields. She took daily heart medication and sometimes was so weak she could barely stand. Arden was only 8 years old, but the weight of life had already fallen hard upon him. He knew he had to excel in his studies so that someday he could earn enough to care for his grandmother and brother. One afternoon, the bell over the door tinkled as a close neighbor knocked, carrying 2 sacks of rice and a few cans of dried fish as relief supplies. Marielle smiled and clasped the neighbor's hand. "Thank you for caring for my grandchildren." In the small kitchen, Arden practiced cooking simple meals, steaming white rice, a vegetable soup seasoned with a pinch of salt, while Elian sat atop a high stool, watching his brother's every careful move. His innocent eyes already understood that their parents were gone. The only sounds were their soft footsteps and the faint murmur from the old radio in the corner. Marielle had told Arden, "Just focus on your studies, and Grandma will take care of both of you." Arden nodded quietly, tears rolling down his thin cheeks. By day, the 7-year-old boy still attended Silverbrook Elementary School. On his battered backpack, a small badge reading "Excellent Student" gleamed. Despite the hardships, he always topped his class in math and science. His classmates sometimes teased him, calling him Arden, the self-reliant boy, but he simply smiled in response. As for Elian, he occasionally missed school when their grandmother took him to appointments, but he still greeted friends with a bright, optimistic smile. Each night, when the street lights dimmed, Arden stayed up late to study. Before him, the portrait of his parents was ever present, Sienna's joyful smile, Rowan's warm gaze. He vowed to live well and find out who had caused that accident. Though small, his hatred for the hit-and-run driver stoked a fierce determination within him. Marielle would stand at the living room doorway, sighing, "Save this family, Arden. Live for your parents, for your brother, and for me." Arden would nod slightly, sitting upright to study by the flickering light of the old desk lamp. Sometimes, childhood dreams flickered back. Arden saw himself strolling through the lavender fields with his parents, cicadas singing in the summer sun, blossoms in full bloom, laughter echoing, the sweet scent of herbs in the air. But the dream always ended abruptly when he awoke to the black gloom of reality. Still, Arden held on to one unwavering belief: one day, justice would come for his parents, and the Vale family would have a brighter future. By candlelight in his study, he wrote the final words in his small diary: "I will not give up. Someday, neither you nor Grandma will cry anymore." Under the star-filled sky, listening to the wind rustle through the lavender blooms, Arden looked up, his eyes shining with resolute hope. In the early days of the new century, the Vale family lived in a small house nestled amid the vast lavender fields, where the setting sun bathed every bloom in golden light. 7-year-old Arden Vale grew up relying on his own 2 hands, rising before dawn on the hills to prepare breakfast for his grandmother Marielle and little brother Elian before stepping through the iron gate to attend Silverbrook Elementary School. He greeted his teachers with a bright smile, even though his heart was heavy with worries about his family's future. After classes, Arden went to the little Maple and Cocoa Cafe near home, where he worked as a waiter, wiping tables, sweeping the floor, and pouring lemonade for customers. His weekly earnings were modest, but he scrupulously saved each penny to buy medicine for his grandmother and school supplies for Elian, ensuring his brother never lacked notebooks or pens. During the remaining hours of each day, Arden studied voraciously beneath the feeble glow of a yellow lamp, murmuring math formulas and English vocabulary to himself. At times, tears rolled down his sunken cheeks when he remembered his departed parents. As for Elian, whenever he finished classes at Silverbrook Junior High, he hurried home to help his grandmother sweep the floor, carefully picking up stray lavender petals in the courtyard before sitting at his own desk to tackle science exercises and practice penmanship with unwavering diligence. Although only 6 years old, Elian already displayed both intelligence and filial devotion. He would smile softly to comfort Marielle whenever she grew tired, gently brew her a cup of tea, and inhale the sweet fragrance of lavender in a deep breath to chase away sadness. Arden and Elian's lives were defined by the crackling reports on the old radio late at night, the fierce winds whipping through the lavender fields, and the neighbor's knock at the door bearing a sack of rice or a bundle of fresh greens. School was the one place where Arden found solace. He was an outstanding student, consistently ranking at the top of his class in math and science, and he had earned a partial boarding scholarship from the Silverbrook Education Council, which significantly eased the family's financial burden. Each time he received a distinguished student certificate, he raced home clutching it in his hands. Marielle would beam with pride, the crow's feet at her eyes softening as joy replaced sorrow. Elian began entering local science contests, proud when he won first place as the youngest competitor. He kept a photograph of the two brothers standing at the award ceremony beside their parents' portrait, as though their mother and father still watched over them, smiling. At night, the flicker of an oil lamp in the kitchen illuminated Arden's gaunt face as he pored over his books. Occasionally, Elian's soft lullaby drifted through the thin walls, lulling their grandmother to sleep, while Marielle's weak but steady heartbeat provided the fragile rhythm that kept the Vale household alive through the cold winter. The silver sedan that had caused the accident flickered through Arden's dreams time and again, its glaring headlights, the screech of metal, and the faint echoes of his parents' screams from the past. Though still young, Arden was haunted by a fervent belief: one day, he would grow up and lift the veil of secrecy, bringing justice for his parents and safeguarding the future of his brother and grandmother. When dawn's light once more spilled through the window, Arden bowed his head and kissed Elian's hair, whispering, "I won't let you or Grandma bear this burden alone." Amid the silent lavender fields, the two Vale brothers walked forward under their grandmother's protective gaze, ready to face the arduous days ahead, yet filled with unyielding hope. In the summer of 2006, when Arden had just turned 14, he officially entered Silverbrook High wearing a crisp white shirt uniform and carrying his old, patchwork backpack. Each morning, he rose at 5 a.m. to prepare breakfast for his grandmother and brother, then arrived at school before the first bell rang, his eyes alight with determination. In his new classes, Arden quickly impressed teachers with his sharp intellect and exemplary grades. To his classmates, he was known as the young man who always sat at the front row, diligently recording every word of the lecture. Despite working part-time at the paper and latte cafe after school until 9 p.m. to earn money for his grandmother's medicine and Elian's supplies, Arden still managed to rank among the top 2 students in math, physics, and chemistry. During breaks, he often spoke with Kieran Anders, son of the Silverbrook police chief, to learn more about police work and criminal investigation procedures. Mina Lawrence, a renowned literature student and daughter of a famous journalist, sometimes borrowed Arden's case files or books on criminal psychology. The two friends would meet under the old oak tree in front of the school to discuss them. That year, 8-year-old Elian, though quiet, displayed his own resolve. Every night, he sent his older brother a hand-drawn picture of the two of them in the lavender fields, accompanied by the note, "Big brother, I will try my best to study well." While Arden tackled complex homework assignments, he also flipped through old newspapers searching for clues about the 1998 accident. One day, he stumbled upon a handwritten note mentioning a silver sedan and the name Carrington. His heart fluttered with both excitement and trepidation, knowing that this information might unlock the secret behind his parents' deaths. Every afternoon after class, Arden pedaled his bicycle home at top speed to cook dinner for his grandmother, vegetable soup or braised pork ribs over rice, simple meals filled with love, then hurried to the old bookstore to help restock shelves, gathering any second-hand volumes on criminal investigation and forensic science he could find, hoping they would someday serve as reference materials. Meanwhile, Elian continued to strive for a scholarship to Silverbrook Junior High for the forthcoming school year. Marielle, growing ever more frail, often sat on the front porch with trembling hands as she read the letters and report cards Arden sent home, her heart both anxious for her grandchildren and silently proud of their achievements. When night fell, the 3 generations of the Vale family gathered in the small kitchen, the yellow light spilling through the frosted glass. Arden gently ruffled Elian's hair and whispered, "Don't worry. I will find a way to bring Mom and Dad back." In his heart, the thirst for justice burned brighter every day, and his resolve remained unshakable, even as life's storms continued to swirl around them. In the autumn of 2011, Arden Vale stepped onto the campus of Silverbrook University carrying a small suitcase and a heart brimming with hope. Gentle sunlight filtered over the pebbled walkways where he would begin his journey studying criminal law on a full scholarship. From his very first days, Arden sensed how different university life was compared to high school: grand lecture halls, a massive library, and spirited discussions among students who had come from every corner of the country. He quickly grew familiar with his professors and classmates, among them Kieran Anders, his close friend from Silverbrook High, who was now also majoring in law, and Mina Lawrence, who was interning as a reporter for the Silverbrook Chronicle. Mina came to campus to cover news and often helped Arden locate investigative resources. During free periods, Arden and Mina would sit on the wooden steps outside the lecture hall, their eyes alight with enthusiasm as they discussed the old cases that Arden still held in his heart. Together, they pored over archival records in the library, reading through every line of the 1998 case file in hopes of uncovering fresh clues about the silver sedan that had killed his parents. Yet student life was not all about books. Arden lived in a dormitory and cooked his own meals, stretching his budget to the limit. He also worked as a teaching assistant for the Law and Criminology Department, copying documents, organizing the law library, and sometimes translating lectures for international students. On afternoons when he had free time, he would walk the half-mile to the paper and latte cafe to do part-time work, making sure he could return in time to check on his grandmother at least every other day, whenever Marielle called in a shaky voice to say she felt unwell. Every dollar Arden earned he saved and sent home to his brother and grandmother, along with letters encouraging Elian to stay strong and continue working hard at Silverbrook Medical School. While Arden immersed himself in classes and part-time work, Elian Vale also began his first year of medical school in the same city, where the hospital lecture bells rang as poignant reminders of the sacred responsibility of healers. Elian lived with Zoe Harper, a young nurse whose family had rented a small apartment near the hospital so that both brothers could stay close to Marielle. Every morning, Elian rode his bicycle to class, silently reciting biochemistry formulas and anatomy diagrams. In the evening, he reported to the emergency department at Silverbrook General Hospital for clinical rounds, shadowing severe cases, taking detailed notes, and consulting with attending physicians. Zoe was always by his side, assisting in difficult procedures and sharing the burden of the challenging lives they served. Occasionally, Elian would find a few minutes to video call his grandmother, hearing her struggle for breath as a mild heart attack flared up again. His heart sank, wishing he could rush home to her, but he knew his responsibility to his patients demanded his presence. Outside the lecture halls and hospital wards, Arden and Elian maintained constant contact with Marielle. Each month, Arden sent a money envelope and a newly published criminal law textbook, along with a photo of himself with Kieran and Mina from the freshman welcome ceremony. Elian often video called Grandma, teasing her, "Don't eat too much chocolate, Grandma, or you'll gain weight and have trouble looking after yourself." The sound of their teasing brought tears of joy to Marielle's eyes. Though she was growing steadily weaker, her grandchildren's perseverance helped ease the pain of her loss. Arden's academic journey was not without challenges at first. Complex legal concepts and the multifaceted arguments of criminal statutes often left him overwhelmed. But with Kieran's help, he gradually learned how to analyze case law and build logical arguments. Late into the night, Arden and Kieran sat together in their shared study room, Arden asked Kieran to coach him on how to take witness statements, while Kieran absorbed Arden's rigorous legal reasoning. Mina, too, stood steadfast beside Arden, bringing him investigative articles and referring him to similar cases from around the world for his research. Professor Peridot Nelson's forensic medicine lectures awed Arden with their depth and precision. Every session dissected wound patterns and criminal methodologies in exhaustive detail. Arden took meticulous notes during each presentation. When class ended, he often replayed the audio recordings on his device, adding further commentary to his small notebook. Outside of class, Arden formed a close-knit study group with Kieran, Mina, and 2 history of crime enthusiasts, regularly organizing trips to the Nordic archives, where original case documents and crime scene photographs were stored. Thanks to his connection with Kieran, the son of Silverbrook's police chief, Arden gained permission to view locked drawer files, including photocopies of the preliminary investigation report for his parents' 1998 accident. Reading those pages still tasted bitter, the terse descriptions of blood spatters, the dent in the windshield, and the line "suspect fled immediately after collision" did nothing to satisfy Arden's quest for justice. Silently, he photographed every document, determined to gather new evidence when the time was right to expose the culprit. Meanwhile, Elian, beyond his hospital shifts, quietly studied forensic medicine on his own. He approached an old anatomy professor who provided him with manuals on identifying fracture patterns, marking scar locations, and analyzing cell samples under a microscope. Recognizing his younger brother's interest, Zoe purchased a miniature microscope for Elian's home practice, boosting his confidence during clinical rounds. Each time Elian shared his findings, microscopic images of old bone wounds and new insights into how Sienna's injuries suggested something beyond a mere traffic accident, Arden looked at him with admiration and pride. "You'll become an excellent doctor," Arden told him, "helping many people and one day assisting me in analyzing our parents' case." Elian nodded and brushed his hair, still dusted from the lab, promising never to let his brother down. Time moved swiftly. Arden finished his first year with outstanding achievements, ranking top of his class in criminal law and securing a departmental research scholarship. He was appointed as a research assistant to Professor Peridot Nelson, helping to decode mysterious forensic cases. Beyond theory, Arden was also selected to join the forensic team at the Silverbrook courthouse, where he compared modern crime scene photos with older records to detect patterns in rising criminal behavior. Whenever he entered the forensic lab, the smell of chemicals and the sight of real wounds made him shudder, but his determination burned brighter. He knew that only by mastering these skills could he one day render true justice. At Silverbrook Medical School, Elian likewise rose to prominence as an exemplary student, proficient in autopsies, skilled in diagnostic imaging, and consistently praised by professors as having the potential to become an outstanding forensic pathologist. Each weekend, Elian visited Grandma Marielle, bringing updated hospital bills and reports on his progress. Marielle watched her grandsons grow stronger each day, her heart laden with joy and worry. "I can't live forever," she would say. "Promise me you'll always care for one another." Arden clasped her trembling hand and replied, "Don't worry, Grandma. We will never let you be alone." In May 2013, when lavender blooms carpeted the hills in purple splendor, Arden and Mina organized a small exhibition in the university library. They displayed documents, photographs, and reconstructed diagrams of the 1998 accident scene. Mina's first investigative article, titled "The Silver Sedan and Its Hidden Secrets," created a sensation. The press, police, and public all turned their attention to Silverbrook, anticipating a breakthrough. Midway through the exhibition, an older man, formerly a police officer assigned to the 1998 case, stepped forward and confessed that he had accepted bribes to conceal the original files. The room fell silent as everyone held their breath. Under the stark white lights, Arden felt sweat bead on his forehead, but his spirit soared. He knew his and his brother's efforts would no longer be in vain. On countless late nights, Arden stayed up until midnight, scrutinizing investigation reports and piecing together the old accident photographs, determined to reconstruct the silver sedan's identity from the lone lead. He and Mina treated this as a shared mission, their bond deepened beyond mere friendship. Sometimes they held hands as they gazed at a faded photograph, wondering if Arden's parents could watch from afar and smile, knowing justice was approaching. Meanwhile, Elian worked tirelessly to establish his reputation in the hospital's forensic department. He sent Arden microscopic images of bone fragments, pinpointing details that indicated Sienna's fatal wound was not purely accidental. Each small discovery convinced Arden that they would have enough evidence to convict the hit-and-run driver. When Arden's second year of university ended, he received a job offer from the Special Criminal Investigation Unit of the Nordic Union Police. The good news arrived just before he planned to return home to celebrate Marielle's 80th birthday. When he told his grandmother over the phone, she spoke between sobs of pride, "You are the Vale family's last hope." "I am so happy." Arden remained silent, tears welling in his eyes, understanding that the weight of his coming responsibilities would exceed any burden he had shouldered before. At the end of June that year, when the lecture halls closed for summer, Arden returned to the small house where weeds and lavender crept over the old pathway. Elian was waiting on the porch, smiling as he showed his brother the results of his latest autopsy practice. "Big brother, I just examined the old wound, and I found an impression that matches metal impact." Arden paused, then smiled back, "Today I was accepted into the Special Criminal Investigation Unit. We will bring justice to Mom and Dad together." On that cool summer afternoon, Marielle's heartbeat remained frail but steady, and her smile was brighter than ever as she looked at her two determined grandsons standing side by side. From the dark night of loss when he was 6 years old to this milestone, the Vale brothers' journey had marked a new turning point. The shadows would soon recede as the light of justice was forged by their unwavering hearts. At the beginning of 2014, Arden Vale officially walked through the doors of Unit 06, Cold Case Division, part of the Special Criminal Investigation Unit of the Nordic Union Police. The harsh overhead lights in the briefing room illuminated the polished brass nameplate, Unit 06, Cold Case Division, stirring Arden's memory of the decades-old files stacked inside. He sat at the long walnut conference table, listening intently to Colonel Liam Anders, Chief of Police in Silverbrook, who had supported Arden since high school. The colonel nodded approvingly at Arden's focused expression. "You will take primary responsibility for re-evaluating unsolved cases, including your family's 1998 accident. Use your knowledge and resolve to awaken the evidence that has lain dormant." Those words struck Arden's heart. He nodded quietly, vowing not to betray the Anders family's trust. On that first afternoon in the icy archival room, Arden bowed his head before glass cases filled with old reports, crime scene photographs, audio recordings, and forensic documents. Neon light bounced off the yellowed pages, making the faded lines of text clearer. Among the hundreds of cold case files, one label immediately drew his eye: file number 1998 Vale. He photographed every scene photo, every scratch on a windshield pillar, and the forensic pathologist's autopsy report. Though the documentation was incomplete, each detail fueled the rage inside him. Lieutenant Kieran Anders, now promoted from Arden's high school friend, stepped forward to assist. "I've contacted Gavin Pierce, a former forensic specialist. He still holds some original crime scene film reels. We'll extract more evidence from those." Arden's gaze blazed with determination. "We need to be thorough so we don't miss a single clue." The following weeks passed in a flurry of tension and urgency. Arden learned to coordinate with his teammates and liaise with other criminal investigation units, interviewing witnesses and examining evidence. Every evening, he returned to the dormitory to pore over legal texts on his laptop, comparing statutes as they had stood in 1998 with any amendments in the intervening years. He emailed Nina Lawrence, asking her to scour old newspapers for references to the Carrington family, the powerful conglomerate whose name had been scrawled in those faint, early notes. Mina immediately leveraged her media contacts, meeting with veteran reporters to collect photographs of that section of highway at dusk on the night of the accident. Gradually, new details emerged. The silver sedan had appeared just as a Carrington Industries factory whistle blew several kilometers away. Each salvaged newspaper clipping and each half-remembered testimony from street vendors added layers to the file, revealing that a merciless hand had deliberately concealed the truth. While Arden tirelessly pursued the investigation, Elian Vale was extending his own dream in his role as a resident physician in the forensic pathology department at Silverbrook General Hospital. He had completed advanced coursework in autopsy procedures and tissue sampling, and he worked as a regular collaborator on cadaver analysis projects. During an overnight shift, Elian received word from Professor Peridot Nelson that preserved tissue samples from 1998 were still stored in the deep freeze vault at the Nordic Union Forensic Institute. Immediately, Elian caught a train to the capital. There, he entered the sub-zero storage chamber where Sienna Vale's and Rowan Vale's tissue specimens lay untouched in ice. Wearing medical gloves, he carefully removed a section of Sienna's rib tissue, placed it on a glass slide, adjusted the microscope's focus, and examined every minutiae. The analysis revealed a deep indentation and clear fracture lines on the rib bone, consistent with a powerful, horizontal force, unlike the pattern expected from a slow-speed collision or a glancing blow. For the first time, Elian believed that his parents had not simply been in an accident, they had been struck deliberately by an external force. He sent Arden an urgent message: "Big brother, the forensic results are in, the wounds are not typical crash injuries. We have definitive forensic evidence." Arden tapped Reed on his phone and placed a hand over his chest, excitement surging within him. "Thank you, M. Now we have the power to see this through to the truth." Early in 2015, the investigation escalated. The Nordic Union Court issued an order freezing all Carrington Industries transactions to facilitate inspection. Gregory Carrington, the powerful heir to the conglomerate, was summoned twice for questioning. Media outlets everywhere ran headlines on the reopened Vale accident case, thrusting Silverbrook into the spotlight over debates of power and justice. Gregory adamantly denied involvement. "My vehicle had nothing to do with that incident, and I had no knowledge of it." However, Mina Lawrence's incisive reporting published leaked screenshots of text messages between Gregory and Devon Holt, a former police officer, in which they discussed cleaning up the 1998 records. Public outcry surged, compelling investigators to re-interview Devon and to cross-check bus stop surveillance footage from the time of the accident. The climax arrived in late spring 2016, when the initial trial opened at the Silverbrook High Court. Arden stood among the prosecutors, his face calm and focused. On the defense side, a formidable team of lawyers shielded Gregory. The judge listened as 24-year-old Lydia Connor recalled her eyewitness account from 1998. A silver sedan approached at over 80 km per hour, struck the Honda, and sped away toward the bus station. "I caught the last characters of its license plate, .12A, just before the driver hurriedly obscured the plate." Next, Elian presented his forensic findings. He described the precise nature of the rib fractures, and Professor Peridot Nelson affirmed the accuracy of his brother's analysis. Tensions peaked when the defense attorney attempted to undermine the forensic evidence, arguing that the tissue samples had degraded over time. Yet Elian calmly explained the preservation protocols and sample stability evaluations, prompting the judge to glare down at the defense counsel. In that moment, the courtroom fell so silent that the faint rustle of turning pages felt deafening. On June 12, 2016, the decisive moment finally arrived. The court announced, Gregory Carrington was convicted of deliberate vehicular homicide, hit-and-run, evidence tampering, and bribery, and sentenced to 25 years in prison. The courtroom reverberated with sighs from the press corps, mingled with cheers from the Vale family's supporters. Arden and Elian emerged from the courtroom feeling a profound lightness tempered by solemnity. Their footsteps echoed on the stone steps bathed in late afternoon sunlight, as though every hardship of the past 18 years had finally found resolution. In the gallery, Marielle wept openly in Zoe's and Mina's arms. Tears of grief and joy stained her weathered face, a testament to justice delayed but now delivered. After the 2016 trial, Arden Vale emerged from the High Court with a heart finally unburdened after 18 years. A crowd gathered outside, surrounding him and his brother Elian, their eyes filled with admiration and curiosity to see the young siblings who had shattered the secrecy they'd carried for so many years. At that moment, Silverbrook seemed to hold its breath. Television networks broadcasted nonstop through the night, and legal journals published treatises on the Carrington Vale case, hailing it as an important precedent for reopening cold cases across the Nordic Union. Arden was invited to a panel discussion at the National Police Academy, where he detailed how he had collected evidence, used forensic techniques, and constructed legal arguments to persuade the court. Meanwhile, Elian rose to prominence in the field of forensic pathology, invited to speak at the Silverbrook Medical Conference about his method for analyzing rib injuries and highlighting signs of external force in overlooked accident cases. From that point on, the brothers' careers turned a new page. Although Marielle's health continued to decline, she still lived each day joyfully under the same roof, her face perpetually lit by a happy smile. Every morning, she sat on the porch, gazing at the lavender fields in full bloom, her eyes shining with pride whenever her grandsons and their friends came to visit. Elian and Zoe lived in an apartment near the hospital, but each weekend they returned home to care for Grandma and help Arden with household chores. Family ties were more healed and peaceful than ever, as if all past suffering had become a memory that illuminated a brighter future. By day, Arden remained at the Special Criminal Investigation Unit, heading the cold cases team that kept reviewing unsolved files spanning decades. He led a group of young investigators, including Kieran Anders, now promoted to team leader, and Mina Lawrence, who had become a celebrated journalist and also served as media advisor to the police's anti-corruption investigations. Arden's office walls were lined with certificates of achievement and crime scene photographs. On his desk sat a small black plaque that read Arden Vale Fund for Road Safety, symbolizing the passion he had devoted to this cause. In October 2018, Arden and Mina held a formal launch of the Arden Vale Fund at the Silverbrook Grand Theatre. The event received strong support from civic organizations, city government, and numerous benefactors. The fund's mission was to assist families of traffic accident victims, provide scholarships for their children, and organize road safety training programs for high school students and rural residents. Elian took on the role of medical advisor, working alongside volunteer physicians to teach first aid skills and discuss the psychological impact of accidents. During the ceremony, Marielle stepped onto the stage and called out her grandsons' names. "Seeing all that you've achieved today, Grandma is so proud. You have honored justice, even though your parents cannot be here to witness it." The audience erupted into applause. For a moment, Marielle lifted her head and listened to the breeze rustling through the lavender garden behind the theater, as if Rowan and Sienna Vale themselves were nodding and smiling. In 2019, Elian founded Silverbrook's first free forensic center, dedicated to conducting autopsies and forensic examinations for families who could not afford them. His wife, Zoe Harper, supported him as coordinator and provided emotional care to the victims' families. Countless tearful faces were comforted as Elian and his team explained the causes of their loved ones' deaths and pledged to help prosecute anyone who knowingly covered up or fled the scene of an accident. The center quickly became a trusted legal and medical resource, safeguarding the rights of ordinary citizens. Meanwhile, Arden continued to pursue other cold cases, from farmers abandoned beside a container truck after a harvest, to tourist buses involved in fatal hit-and-run incidents. Each case he closed brought him profound satisfaction, as though he were restoring a measure of justice for orphaned children and forgotten victims. In 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic swept across the Nordic Union, and Silverbrook became a hotspot. Hospitals overflowed, long lines formed for testing, and the police were tasked with maintaining order in a state of crisis. Arden took on dual roles, investigating crimes while also supporting the public health response. He coordinated with the Ministry of Health to disinfect slum areas and under-resourced medical facilities. Elian, as a forensic pathologist, joined frontline doctors in overcrowded wards, caring for patients and performing autopsies under dire conditions. At the most critical moment, Marielle suffered a severe heart episode, prompting Arden and Elian to rush her to the hospital, staying by her side until she stabilized. Watching his grandsons toil in the pandemic's throes, Marielle gripped each of their hands tightly and mustered a weak, encouraging smile. "My children work so hard, but always remember, Grandma is here, watching over you." Even on the busiest nights, Arden in his police uniform and Elian in his white lab coat, they found moments to call one another, sharing brief words of comfort and urging each other to keep going. By late 2021, the pandemic was under control. Arden and Mina married in an intimate ceremony set in the lavender garden beside Silverbrook Lake. Purple blooms swayed in the breeze around them, and their close friends and professional colleagues formed a warm circle of witnesses. Elian, as vice president of the Arden Vale Fund, stood beside his brother, beaming as Arden placed a wedding ring on Mina's finger. Zoe, Elian's maid of honor, gently wiped away tears as she watched that sacred moment. Petals of paper confetti burst into the sky, marking a new beginning for both young couples. The wedding was more than a personal celebration, it symbolized the unity forged by those who had joined forces to deliver justice for Arden's parents. The festivities concluded with the Vale Harper family's gathering in the small house, Marielle perched in her favorite armchair, eyes glistening as she gazed at the two happy couples. Though her illness persisted, it no longer worsened. At peace, she smiled and said, "Grandma is content. You all must live well and continue to spread justice." Under the warm glow of lamplight, those who had endured such pain raised their glasses in a toast, closing a challenging chapter and opening a new one of familial love, justice, and hope. Early in 2022, Elise Vale, Arden and Mina's firstborn daughter, came into the world, bringing immense joy to the entire family. The baby girl had her father's large, expressive eyes and her mother's light brown hair. Although Marielle's health had further declined, she was overjoyed to cradle her granddaughter and whispered softly, "Grandma will tell you all about your grandparents, so you understand how precious love and justice can be." Meanwhile, Elian and Zoe were delighted to learn they were expecting a child. They discussed names and chose something short yet meaningful, Arlo Vale, in honor of the day their parents returned to care for their very first patient during the pandemic. Each weekend, both sets of parents brought their children back home to visit Marielle, and the little house among the lavender fields seemed illuminated by the sound of children's laughter. Arden still commuted to Unit 06 every day, but now he served as deputy team leader, in charge of cold case oversight and volunteer training programs for young police cadets. He frequently shared practical experience with them, how to photograph a crime scene, preserve evidence properly, and draft a preliminary forensic report. Colleagues often said that Arden was an ideal role model, fair and determined, never wavering under pressure, and consistently bearing the responsibility of protecting vulnerable people. Kieran Anders had earned his master's degree in criminal law and now served as the unit's permanent legal advisor, yet he still stopped by the paper and latte cafe from time to time for an iced coffee, reminiscing about their student days. Mina Lawrence, now deputy managing editor of the Silverbrook Chronicle's investigations desk, continued working closely with Arden to publish in-depth reports that exposed injustices within the legal system, shining a light on improved procedures and anti-privilege group corruption efforts. After completing advanced forensic pathology training within the Nordic Union, Elian returned to become the head of forensic medicine at Silverbrook General Hospital. Under his leadership, The Forensic Center not only continued offering free examinations for victims' families but also launched an educational program in forensic medical science for senior medical students. He also developed a traffic safety awareness education module for schools, working with the Arden and Vale Fund to hold workshops that taught students about the aftermath of accidents and the legal repercussions of hit-and-run crimes. Zoe Harper, once a volunteer nurse, now served as communications director for both the hospital's public relations and the fund. Their seminars were always fully attended by students, parents, and teachers. Media coverage was extensive, helping shift public attitudes and reduce severe accidents in the region. In 2023, the Vale brothers, alongside close friends like Kieran, Mina, and Zoe, organized the Light of Justice Gala to raise funds for a memorial wall project at Silverbrook Memorial Park. The memorial wall was a tribute to victims lost to traffic accidents, each name, date of birth, and date of death carved beneath a brief message: "A life can vanish in a moment, cherish each breath." The gala featured acoustic musical performances, and their children Elise and Arlo joined them on a small stage to dance while Marielle, seated in the front row, watched with tears of pride in her eyes. The evening ended with Arden announcing that donations had far exceeded the initial goal, covering costs to build the monument and fund more than 200 traffic safety scholarships. Throughout that time, the happiness of Arden's and Elian's families only deepened. Simple moments, cooking Sunday lunch together, tending the lavender garden on the porch, strolling with the grandchildren by Silverbrook Lake, became treasured memories. Although Marielle had reached 90 and sometimes struggled to recognize those around her, the sound of her children's and grandchildren's voices always brought a peaceful smile to her face. On the days when she felt weak, the two brothers took turns by her side, reading her fairy tales about brave children who conquered darkness, stories that echoed Arden's and Elian's own journey. Late in 2025, a wheelchair-carrying Marielle arrived at the gates of Silverbrook Memorial Park. The late afternoon sun cast golden light over the winding paths through the hills, revealing the newly completed Garden of Remembrance that expanded the original memorial wall threefold. At the center, the inscription Rowan Vale, 1972–1998, and Sienna Vale, 1974–1998, was etched in deep relief, alongside hundreds of other names. Arden and Elian, once fatherless children, stood quietly, heads bowed. In their hearts was a warming smile recalling their parents' memory, commingled with profound sorrow. Still holding each other's hands, they gazed up at the monument, knowing that although time would continue to flow, family love and the values of justice would never fade. By 2025, Silverbrook no longer bore the melancholic shadow of its past. The city had become a model of traffic safety and community consciousness, thanks to the unceasing efforts of the Arden Vale Fund and the solidarity of its citizens. Arden Vale, now Deputy Chief of Police for the Silverbrook District, led a specialized investigative unit in coordination with the Forensic Department to enforce strict laws against reckless drivers and those who fled the scene of accidents. He kept a tradition of visiting Marielle once a week, despite his jam-packed schedule, to bring her a bouquet of lavender and share news from the charity soccer matches he and Elian organized to raise funds. Marielle sat on the porch, her eyes dim but content whenever she detected the rustle of leaves and smelled the lavender's comforting fragrance, clutching her two sons' hands as though absorbing their final warmth. Arden and Mina's little girl Elise was now 4, beginning piano lessons and ballet in the city's youth arts club. Elise often accompanied her father to Unit 06 or to various workshops, mischievously pressing the presentation remote to help Daddy investigate. Mina had declined an offer to become managing editor so she could focus on raising her daughter and supporting Arden's work with the fund. She also continued writing investigative exposés, focusing on protecting the rights of orphaned children and abused women. Their modest home was filled with children's laughter and the artifacts of past and present. An old photograph of Rowan and Sienna hung prominently in the living room, beside a colorful drawing Elise had made of the family standing in front of her parents' grave, the corner of the garden still bloomed with lavender, where Elise and Arlo chased butterflies on sunny afternoons. Elian and Zoe were overjoyed with their 3-year-old son, Arlo, who loved drawing and building Lego scenes themed around doctors and police officers. Arlo liked to perch beside his father while he analyzed CT scans under a microscope, or when his father taught him to sketch hypothetical crime scene diagrams at his compact home office. Though Zoe was busy managing communications for both the hospital and the fund, she still fulfilled her role as devoted mother, caring for Marielle each morning, preparing lunch for Elian, and sending Mina short video clips of Arlo dancing in his tiny white lab coat. Whenever the two families gathered in the lavender garden on weekends, they hosted small celebrations, discussing upcoming projects, like a joint humanitarian trip to remote Highland schools, or simply savoring almond cookies that Elian had baked for Grandma. Late in 2025, the expanded memorial wall, now named the Garden of Gratitude, was completed directly in front of the city's entrance. Arden and Elian invited representatives from all the families of accident victims to attend the official opening. The garden was designed with harmonious greenery, a gently flowing water feature, and cherry blossom trees. It also featured an interactive data system where visitors could scan QR codes to read each victim's story, learn accident prevention tips, and contribute further to the fund. Though her legs had weakened, Marielle was brought in her wheelchair to the refreshment stand, where she handed Arden an aged lavender blossom and said, "I once picked this leaf for your father to give to your mother. Now I give it to you so you remember that love and justice never fade." At the dedication ceremony, Arden delivered an emotional speech. "My parents, Rowan and Sienna Vale, left this world before they could watch their children grow. If not for our quest for justice, we would not be standing here today." The Garden of Gratitude is not merely a silent memorial, it is a testament to family bonds, community responsibility, and our unwavering faith in justice. "I dedicate it to this city, where my parents once lived, where they perished, but where they left a light that will guide us forever." Thunderous applause followed, and as the sunset bathed the entire park in a fiery glow, the city's tall buildings reflected shades of orange and red. In the soft twilight, Arden and Elian stood before the gates of the Garden of Gratitude, gazing up at the star-filled sky. The two brothers clasped hands, honoring their painful past while smiling at the vibrant present and the promise of tomorrow. Their children, Elise and Arlo, played at their feet, too young to understand the family's journey for justice but already carrying pride and boundless love in their hearts. Marielle, seated in her wheelchair, quietly hummed an old lullaby about peace and hope, and then closed her eyes in contentment, knowing that the Vale lineage had fulfilled their sacred mission, to bring justice to her children, carry forward a legacy of love, and shine a guiding light for generations yet to come.